The vast oceans of our planet have always been more than just stretches of water. They were the lifeblood of ancient civilizations, the silent highways that carried not just goods, but ideas, cultures, and technologies across continents. Long before the age of satellites and GPS, ancient mariners ventured into the unknown, guided by stars, currents, and an unshakable sense of curiosity. These weren't just traders, they were pioneers, weaving together a global network that connected distant lands and peoples in ways that shaped the course of history. From the Phoenicians, who mastered the Mediterranean, to the Polynesians, who navigated the vast Pacific with nothing but the stars and the waves, these ancient networks were the unsung heroes of globalization. But how did they do it? What drove them to risk everything for trade? And what secrets did these maritime routes hold that still echo in our world today? Together, we'll uncover the hidden stories of these ancient trade networks, revealing how they transformed the world and how their legacy still shapes the way we live today. The story of maritime trade begins not with grand empires or towering ships, but with humble beginnings, small communities daring to look beyond the horizon. Around 3000 BCE, when the world was still young, the first traders set sail. Picture this: wooden boats, some barely more than rafts, bobbing on waves that seemed endless. These early sailors weren't just seeking adventure, they were driven by necessity. Resources like timber, textiles, and precious stones weren't evenly spread across the ancient world, and trading became a lifeline for survival. Mesopotamia, with its fertile lands, and the Indus Valley, rich in craftsmanship, became some of the earliest hubs of this exchange. But why take such risks? The open sea was a place of mystery and danger. Storms could swallow ships whole, and navigation tools were rudimentary at best, yet the rewards outweighed the risks. The promise of wealth was one thing, but it wasn't just about material gain. These early voyages were also about discovery, encountering new cultures, sharing knowledge, and forging connections. Imagine a Mesopotamian trader holding a piece of Indus Valley pottery for the first time, marveling at its intricate design. These moments weren't just transactions, they were the first threads of a global tapestry being woven. What's fascinating is how these early efforts laid the foundation for everything that followed. The routes carved by these ancient mariners became the arteries of future trade networks, carrying not just goods but ideas. The concept of globalization, often seen as a modern phenomenon, has roots that stretch back thousands of years. Long before the Silk Road or the Age of Exploration, it was these daring voyages that began to link distant corners of the world. And while their tools were simple, their impact was profound. The seeds of connection they planted would grow into the vast networks that shaped civilizations for millennia. Among the many ancient seafaring civilizations, the Phoenicians stand out as true pioneers of maritime trade. Emerging from the rugged coastline of modern-day Lebanon, these skilled navigators turned the Mediterranean into their own sprawling marketplace. Cities like Tyre and Sidon became bustling hubs of commerce, where merchants gathered to trade goods that would soon travel across the known world. Purple dye, extracted from the rare murex snail, became their signature product, a luxury so coveted that it became synonymous with royalty. But the Phoenicians didn't stop there. Their ships carried glassware crafted with techniques that were centuries ahead of their time, and cedar wood, prized for its strength and fragrance, which was exported to build temples and palaces as far away as Egypt and Mesopotamia. What truly set the Phoenicians apart, though, wasn't just their ability to trade goods, it was their knack for connecting people. They didn't just move products, they moved ideas. Their most enduring contribution, the alphabet. Before the Phoenicians, writing systems were complex and cumbersome, often limited to scribes and elites. But the Phoenician alphabet, with its simple, adaptable script, transformed communication. It spread like wildfire, adopted and adapted by countless cultures, eventually evolving into the scripts we use today. This wasn't just a cultural exchange, it was a revolution that reshaped how humanity shared knowledge. Navigating the vast Mediterranean without modern tools might seem impossible today, but the Phoenicians made it look effortless. They relied on a deep understanding of the natural world. By day, they followed the patterns of the waves and the direction of the wind. By night, they charted their course by the stars, using constellations as their guide. Their ships, sturdy and fast, were marvels of ancient engineering, capable of weathering storms and crossing vast distances. This combination of skill, knowledge, and innovation allowed them to establish colonies and trading posts from North Africa to Spain, creating a network that linked distant cultures in ways that had never been seen before. The impact of the Phoenicians' maritime network went far beyond trade. They were cultural bridge builders, introducing art, technology, and ideas to the regions they touched. Their colonies, like Carthage in modern-day Tunisia, grew into powerful cities in their own right, carrying on the legacy of their founders. The Mediterranean, once a barrier, became a meeting place, a melting pot of cultures, languages, and traditions. Through their voyages, the Phoenicians didn't just enrich their own civilization. They laid the groundwork for a connected world, proving that the sea could be a source of unity rather than division. Their story is a vivid reminder of how trade, at its core, is about more than goods. It's about the bonds we create and the stories we share. While the Mediterranean had its Phoenicians, the Indian Ocean had its own natural ally, the monsoon winds. These powerful seasonal winds weren't just a force of nature. They were the engine that drove one of the most dynamic trade networks in history. For ancient sailors, the monsoons were a double-edged sword. On one hand, they offered a predictable rhythm, blowing from the southwest in summer and reversing to the northeast in winter. This pattern allowed traders to plan their voyages with remarkable precision, knowing that the winds would carry them to their destinations and back again. But on the other hand, these same winds could unleash ferocious storms, turning the ocean into a tempest of towering waves and relentless rain. The key to success lay in timing. Ancient mariners learned to read the skies and the seas, setting sail at just the right moment to catch the favorable winds. This wasn't just guesswork, it was a skill honed over generations, passed down through stories, songs, and practical experience. By the first millennium BC, traders from Arabia, India, and East Africa had mastered this dance with the elements, creating a seamless flow of goods across vast distances. Spices like cinnamon and pepper, prized for their flavor and preservative qualities, traveled from India to the Middle East. Gold and ivory flowed from East Africa, while Chinese silk made its way westward, carried by ships that braved the open ocean. What's truly remarkable is how this network wasn't just about goods, it was about people. The monsoon trade routes became highways of cultural exchange, where ideas, languages, and religions mingled. Arab merchants brought Islam to the coasts of India, while Indian traders introduced Hinduism and Buddhism to Southeast Asia. The port city of Calicut in southern India, for example, became a melting pot where traders from across the Indian Ocean gathered, sharing stories and forging alliances. These interactions weren't just economic, they were the building blocks of a shared identity that transcended borders. Yet, navigating the monsoons wasn't without its dangers. Storms could strike without warning, and even the most experienced sailors weren't immune to the ocean's fury. Shipwrecks were a constant threat, and tales of lost cargoes and drowned crews were woven into the fabric of maritime lore. To mitigate these risks, ancient traders developed ingenious strategies. They built sturdy ships, reinforced with teak wood and secured with coir ropes that could withstand the harsh conditions. They also relied on celestial navigation, using the stars to guide them when the skies were clear. and when storms did hit, they sought refuge in natural harbors along the coast where they could wait out the worst of the weather. The monsoons weren't just a challenge to overcome, they were a force to be respected. Ancient mariners understood that they were at the mercy of the winds and waves, and this humility shaped their approach to trade. They didn't see themselves as conquerors of the sea, but as partners in a delicate balance. The monsoon trade routes remind us that success often depends on our ability to adapt, to work with nature rather than against it. And in doing so, these ancient sailors created a legacy of resilience and connection that continues to inspire us today. While the Silk Road conjures images of caravans winding through deserts and mountain passes, its maritime counterpart was a sprawling web of sea routes that connected the East and West in ways just as profound. Known as the Maritime Silk Road, this aquatic network stretched from the bustling ports of China to the sun-drenched shores of the Mediterranean, weaving together empires, cultures, and economies. Unlike the overland journey, which relied on camels and caravanserais, this sea route was powered by the ingenuity of ancient shipbuilders and the courage of sailors who braved the open ocean. Chinese junks, with their distinctive sails and sturdy hulls, Arab dhows, known for their sleek design and agility, and Persian ships, built to withstand long voyages, all played a part in this grand exchange. Together, they carried not just silk, porcelain, and spices, but also ideas, religions, and technologies that would reshape the world. At the heart of this network were two towering powers, the Tang Dynasty of China and the Abbasid Caliphate of the Islamic world. The Tang Dynasty, often regarded as a golden age of Chinese civilization, was a driving force behind the Maritime Silk Road. Under their rule, ports like Guangzhou became thriving hubs of international trade, where merchants from as far as Arabia and India gathered to exchange goods and stories. The Tang didn't just welcome foreign traders, they actively encouraged cultural exchange, fostering an environment where Buddhism, Islam, and other faiths could flourish alongside traditional Chinese beliefs. Meanwhile, in the West, the Abbasid Caliphate was making its own mark. With its capital in Baghdad, the Abbasids became a beacon of learning and commerce, drawing traders and scholars from across the known world. Their control of key ports like Hormuz, strategically located at the mouth of the Persian Gulf, gave them a pivotal role in the flow of goods and ideas. But the Maritime Silk Road wasn't just about the empires at either end. It was also about the vibrant ports that dotted its path. Take Guangzhou, for example. Known as the City of Five Rams, it was one of the busiest ports in the ancient world, a place where ships from Southeast Asia, India, and the Middle East converged. Walking through its markets, you'd find everything from fragrant spices to delicate porcelain, alongside exotic animals and rare gems. Similarly, Hormuz, perched on the edge of the Persian Gulf, was a crossroads of cultures. Persian, Arab, Indian, and Chinese merchants mingled here, creating a melting pot of languages, traditions, and innovations. These ports weren't just stops along a trade route, they were cultural hubs where the world came together. What made the Maritime Silk Road truly remarkable, though, was its ability to connect people across vast distances. Unlike the overland route, which was often constrained by geography and politics, the sea offered a more flexible and expansive network. Ships could carry larger quantities of goods, making trade more efficient and profitable. But the real power of this network lay in its ability to foster exchange beyond commerce. Think of a Chinese potter learning new techniques from a Persian artisan, or an Arab trader introducing a new spice to a Chinese chef. These interactions weren't just transactions, they were moments of connection that enriched the lives of everyone involved. The legacy of the Maritime Silk Road is still felt today. It wasn't just a trade route, it was a bridge between civilizations, shaping the course of history in ways that are still unfolding. By linking the East and West, it laid the groundwork for the globalized world we live in. proving that even the vastest oceans can be crossed when there's a shared desire to connect. The story of the Maritime Silk Road is a testament to the power of curiosity, courage, and collaboration, a reminder that the world has always been smaller and more interconnected than it seems. Navigating the vast and unpredictable oceans without the aid of modern technology was no small feat. It required a blend of observation, intuition, and deep respect for the natural world. Ancient sailors didn't have compasses, GPS, or satellite maps. Instead, they relied on the sky, the sea, and the stories passed down through generations. For the Polynesians, who ventured across the immense Pacific Ocean, the stars were their guiding lights. They memorized the positions of constellations, using them like celestial road maps to chart their course from one island to the next. But it wasn't just the stars that guided them. They also paid close attention to the behavior of birds, knowing that certain species would fly toward land at specific times of day. Even the patterns of ocean swells, the rhythmic rise and fall of waves provided clues about nearby islands and safe passages. This intricate knowledge, honed over centuries, allowed them to navigate distances that would have seemed impossible to others. In the Mediterranean, where coastlines were closer together but storms could still strike without warning, sailors developed their own methods of wayfinding. Landmarks, mountain peaks, distinctive cliffs, or even the silhouette of a distant city became their reference points. By day, they used the position of the sun to gauge direction, and by night, they turned to the North Star, a constant in the ever-shifting sky. The Phoenicians, masters of the Mediterranean, even recorded their routes on primitive maps, creating a kind of maritime memory that could be shared with future generations. These techniques weren't just practical, they were a testament to the ingenuity of ancient mariners who transformed the challenges of the sea into opportunities for discovery. What's striking is how these navigation methods were more than just tools, they were a way of life. For the Polynesians, the ocean wasn't a barrier, it was a pathway, a living entity to be understood and respected. Their voyages were guided by a deep connection to the environment, a relationship built on centuries of observation and tradition. Similarly, Mediterranean sailors saw their journeys as a dialogue with the elements, a constant negotiation between human skill and the power of nature. This mindset wasn't just about survival, it was about harmony. The legacy of these ancient navigation techniques is still felt today. Modern sailors and scientists have studied these methods, marveling at their precision and effectiveness. The Polynesian art of wayfinding, for example, has been revived in recent years, with traditional navigators guiding voyages across the Pacific using only the stars and the sea. It's a powerful reminder of how much we can learn from the past, not just about navigation, but about the resilience and resourcefulness of those who came before us. As we reflect on these ancient secrets, it's impossible not to be inspired by the courage and creativity of these early navigators. They didn't just cross oceans, they bridged worlds, connecting distant lands and cultures in ways that continue to shape our lives. Their stories remind us that even in the face of the unknown, human ingenuity and determination can chart a course to new horizons. And perhaps in rediscovering their wisdom, we can find new ways to navigate the challenges of our own time. Long before the Phoenicians or the Greeks, there was another civilization that ruled the waves, one whose influence stretched across the Aegean Sea like a net, binding islands and distant shores together. This was the world of the Minons, a people who thrived on the island of Crete and whose mastery of the sea was unmatched in their time. The Minons didn't just trade, they built a thalassocracy, a maritime empire where their ships became the lifeblood of an interconnected world. Olive oil, wine, and intricately painted pottery flowed from their ports, carried by vessels that ventured far beyond their home shores. But what made the Minons so successful, and why did their once thriving empire vanish so abruptly? The story of the Minon Thalassocracy is a tale of innovation, mystery, and a sudden, dramatic fall that still puzzles historians today. At the heart of the Minon Thalassocracy was their ability to harness the resources of the sea. Crete, with its fertile land and strategic location, became a hub of trade and cultural exchange. The Minons didn't just rely on what their island could provide. They looked outward, forging connections with Egypt, Anatolia, and the Cycladic Islands. Their ships, sleek and sturdy, were marvels of ancient engineering designed to navigate the unpredictable waters of the Aegean. These vessels carried more than goods, they carried ideas. Minon art, with its vibrant frescoes and intricate designs, influenced cultures across the region, while their advanced techniques in pottery and metallurgy set new standards for craftsmanship. But the Minons' success wasn't just about what they built or traded, it was about how they connected people. Their thalassocracy wasn't built on conquest or domination, but on cooperation and exchange. They established trading posts and colonies, creating a network that allowed goods, knowledge, and culture to flow freely. Imagine a Minon merchant arriving in a bustling port, unloading amphorae filled with olive oil and returning with exotic goods from distant lands. These interactions weren't just economic transactions, they were moments of cultural fusion that enriched both the Minons and their trading partners. Then, around 1450 BC, this thriving civilization came to an abrupt end. The palaces that once stood as symbols of Minon power lay in ruins, and their once bustling ports fell silent. What caused this sudden collapse? Theories abound, each offering a glimpse into the possible demise of this maritime empire. One of the most compelling explanations points to natural disasters. Crete sits in a seismically active region, and evidence suggests that a massive earthquake or volcanic eruption, perhaps the cataclysmic eruption of Thera on the island of Santorini, could have devastated the island, crippling its economy and infrastructure. The resulting tsunamis and ash clouds would have been catastrophic, leaving the Minons vulnerable. Others argue that external forces played a role. The rise of the Mycenaeans, a powerful civilization from mainland Greece, may have led to invasion and conquest. Archaeological evidence shows Mycenaean influence in Crete after this period, suggesting a possible takeover. Could the Minons' once thriving thalassocracy have fallen to a rival power? Or was their decline the result of internal strife, economic instability, social unrest, or even a breakdown in their trade networks? What's fascinating is how the Minons' legacy endures, even as their empire faded into history. Their art, architecture, and seafaring traditions influenced the cultures that followed, particularly the Mycenaeans, who carried forward many of their innovations. The Minon thalassocracy may have vanished, but its impact on the ancient world was profound. It reminds us that even the mightiest empires are shaped by forces beyond their control, and that the stories they leave behind can continue to inspire long after they're gone. The mystery of the Minon thalassocracy invites us to explore not just what happened, but why it matters. It's a story of resilience and ingenuity, of a people who dared to dream beyond the horizon and built a world that connected distant shores. And as we uncover the secrets of their rise and fall, we're reminded of the fragility of human achievement and the enduring power of the sea to shape our destinies. The open waters that carried the riches of the ancient world also carried a shadow, a constant threat that lurked just beyond the horizon. Piracy was as much a part of maritime trade as the goods themselves, a wild and unpredictable force that shaped the course of history in ways both destructive and surprisingly complex. From the Mediterranean to the South China Sea, pirates struck fear into the hearts of merchants and rulers alike, preying on ships laden with treasures and raiding coastal settlements with ruthless efficiency. But piracy wasn't just a lawless scourge. It was a phenomenon that blurred the lines between crime and strategy, chaos and control. Take the infamous Sea Peoples, a mysterious confederation of raiders who terrorized the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BC. These marauders swept across the waves, attacking coastal cities and disrupting trade routes with such ferocity that entire civilizations, including the mighty Hittites, were brought to their knees. Yet the Sea Peoples weren't just mindless plunderers. Some scholars argue that they were displaced communities, driven by famine or upheaval to take to the seas in search of survival. Their raids were as much a symptom of a changing world as they were acts of violence, reflecting the interconnectedness and fragility of ancient societies. Piracy wasn't always the work of rogue bands either. In some cases, it was state-sponsored, a tool of warfare wielded by kings and empires. The Phoenicians, for example, were known to employ privateers, essentially legalized pirates, to harass rival traders and weaken their enemies' economies. In the South China Sea, Chinese dynasties like the Han and Tang often turned a blind eye to pirate activity as long as it targeted their adversaries. This dual nature of piracy as both a threat and a strategic asset reveals just how intertwined it was with the politics of the ancient world. But how did ancient civilizations combat this ever-present danger? The answers are as varied as the cultures themselves. In the Mediterranean, naval patrols became a common defense, with city-states like Athens and Rhodes maintaining fleets to protect their shipping lanes. The Romans took a more aggressive approach, launching campaigns to eradicate pirate strongholds, such as their famous campaign against the Cilician pirates in the 1st century BC. In the Indian Ocean, merchants often traveled in convoys, banding together for mutual protection. And in East Asia, coastal fortifications and early warning systems were developed to fend off raids from the sea. Perhaps one of the most intriguing strategies was the concept of informal taxation. In some regions, rulers tolerated piracy as long as pirates paid a share of their spoils to the local authorities. This uneasy arrangement turned piracy into a kind of shadow economy, where the line between criminal and contributor became blurred. It was a pragmatic solution born out of necessity that highlights the complex relationship between power, profit, and survival in the ancient world. The legacy of ancient piracy is a reminder that the sea has always been a place of both opportunity and peril. It wasn't just a battleground for goods, but for ideas, power, and survival. The strategies used to combat piracy, whether through force, diplomacy, or adaptation, reveal the ingenuity and resilience of those who dared to venture into the unknown. And as we navigate the challenges of our own time, the lessons of the past remind us that the balance between order and chaos is often as shifting and unpredictable as the waves themselves. The movement of goods across ancient trade routes is often celebrated for its economic impact, but there's another, equally profound legacy: the spread of ideas, particularly religion. Ships laden with spices, silks, and ceramics also carried something far more intangible: faith. As merchants traveled from port to port, they didn't just exchange goods. They shared beliefs, rituals, and stories that would shape the spiritual identity of entire regions. From the shores of India to the coasts of Southeast Asia and across the Mediterranean, maritime trade became a powerful vehicle for the dissemination of religion, creating connections that transcended geography and culture. Take Buddhism, for instance. Originating in India around the 6th century BC, it began as a local philosophy, but its journey across Asia was anything but confined to land. By the 1st century CE, Buddhist monks and traders were boarding ships bound for Southeast Asia, carrying scriptures, statues, and teachings. Ports like Srivijaya in modern-day Indonesia became hubs of Buddhist learning, where monks and scholars gathered to study and translate sacred texts. The sea routes allowed Buddhism to flourish in places like Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Thailand, where it became deeply rooted in the cultural fabric. Art and architecture flourished alongside faith, with towering stupas and intricate temple carvings serving as lasting testaments to this exchange. But Buddhism wasn't the only religion to ride the waves of trade. Christianity, born in the Roman Empire, found its way across the Mediterranean and beyond, carried by merchants and missionaries who followed the same routes as olive oil and wine. Early Christian communities sprang up in port cities like Alexandria and Antioch, where the constant flow of people and ideas created fertile ground for new beliefs to take root. Similarly, Islam, which emerged in the 7th century CE, spread rapidly along the Indian Ocean trade routes. Arab merchants, already well established in the region, brought not only goods but also the teachings of the Quran, which resonated with coastal communities from East Africa to the Malabar coast of India. What's fascinating is how these religions didn't just spread, they adapted. As they traveled, they absorbed local traditions and customs, creating unique blends of belief and practice. In Southeast Asia, for example, Buddhism merged with indigenous animist traditions, giving rise to distinct forms of worship and art. In the Mediterranean, Christian iconography drew on Greco-Roman artistic styles, while Islamic architecture in places like India incorporated local motifs and techniques. This blending wasn't just a byproduct of trade, it was a testament to the power of connection. The role of individuals in this process cannot be overstated. Merchants, often seen as purely economic actors, were also cultural ambassadors, sharing stories and beliefs as they traded goods. Missionaries, driven by faith, braved long and perilous journeys to spread their teachings, while pilgrims traveled to sacred sites, carrying their beliefs with them and forging bonds between distant communities. These networks of people, not just ships and routes, were the true engines of religious exchange. The legacy of this spiritual diffusion is still visible today. From the grand mosques of Zanzibar to the ancient Buddhist temples of Borobudur, the footprints of maritime trade are etched into the world's sacred landscapes. These sites aren't just places of worship, they're living reminders of how the sea connected people, not just through commerce but through shared beliefs and aspirations. The story of religion spread through trade is a powerful reminder that the most enduring cargo isn't always material, it's the ideas and connections that shape who we are. Beneath the waves of the Mediterranean, just off the coast of modern-day Egypt, lies a city that once stood as a beacon of trade and culture, Thonis, Heracleion. For centuries, this bustling port thrived at the mouth of the Nile, serving as a vital gateway between Egypt and the wider Mediterranean world. Ships laden with grain, gold, and exotic goods flowed in and out of its harbors, while merchants from Greece, Phoenicia, and beyond mingled in its markets. Temples dedicated to Egyptian gods like Ammon and Osiris stood alongside statues of Greek heroes, a testament to the city's role as a cultural crossroads. Yet, around the 8th century CE, this vibrant metropolis simply vanished, swallowed by the sea and forgotten by history. It wasn't until the year 2000 that Thonis Heracleion was rediscovered, hidden beneath layers of sand and silt, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. The story of this lost city is not just a tale of trade and prosperity, it's a poignant reminder of how even the mightiest civilizations can be humbled by the forces of nature. The rise of Thonis Heracleion was tied to its strategic location. Situated at the edge of the Nile Delta, the city was perfectly positioned to control the flow of goods between Egypt and the Mediterranean. It wasn't just a port, it was a customs checkpoint where foreign merchants paid duties before their goods could enter Egypt. This made Thonis Heracleion a linchpin of the ancient economy, a place where wealth and influence converged. The city's temples, with their towering statues and intricate carvings, reflected its prosperity, while its harbors buzzed with activity as ships from distant lands docked to trade. Imagine the scene: sailors unloading amphorae filled with wine, merchants haggling over the price of spices, and priests conducting rituals to honor the gods who watched over this thriving hub. But what caused this flourishing city to disappear? The answer lies in a combination of natural forces and human activity. Over time, the Nile Delta began to shift, its sediments slowly building up and altering the landscape. Earthquakes, a common occurrence in the region, may have caused parts of the city to sink, while rising sea levels and soil liquefaction further destabilized its foundations. The very waters that had brought Thonis Heracleion its wealth eventually became its undoing. By the 8th century CE, the city had slipped beneath the waves, its buildings, statues, and streets swallowed by the sea. For over a millennium, it lay hidden, its existence preserved only in scattered references in ancient texts and the occasional relic washed ashore. The rediscovery of Thonis Heracleion in the year 2000 was nothing short of extraordinary. Led by underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio, a team of researchers used advanced sonar technology to map the seabed, revealing the outlines of a city frozen in time. Statues of gods and pharaohs, intricately carved stone slabs, and even the remains of ships were brought to the surface, offering a glimpse into a world long lost. Among the most striking finds was a massive stele inscribed with a decree from Pharaoh Nectanebo I, which confirmed the city's dual identity as both Thonis, its Egyptian name, and Heracleion, its Greek counterpart. This discovery not only validated historical accounts but also highlighted the city's unique role as a bridge between cultures. What makes Thonis Heracleion so captivating is how it encapsulates the dual nature of maritime trade, its power to connect and its vulnerability to the forces of nature. The city's rise was a testament to human ingenuity and ambition, its fall a sobering reminder of our fragility. Today, as we explore its ruins, we're not just uncovering the past, we're learning lessons about resilience, adaptation, and the enduring legacy of the connections we forged. Thonis Heracleion may have vanished beneath the waves, but its story continues to resonate, a testament to the enduring allure of the ancient world and the mysteries it still holds. While the stories of ancient maritime trade often focus on the exploits of merchant kings and daring sailors, there's another narrative that's been quietly submerged beneath the waves of history: the role of women. Far from being passive observers, women were active participants in these sprawling trade networks, shaping economies, cultures, and even the course of history itself. From the Mediterranean to the South China Sea, women defied societal expectations, carving out spaces for themselves in a world dominated by men. Their stories are not just footnotes, they are testaments to resilience, ingenuity, and the quiet power of those who worked behind the scenes. Take the legendary Phoenician Princess Dido, for example. While her story is often wrapped in myth, it's rooted in historical truths that reveal much about the role of women in maritime trade. According to legend, Dido fled her homeland of Tyre after her brother, the king, murdered her husband. With a small group of followers, she set sail across the Mediterranean, eventually founding the city of Carthage. But Dido wasn't just a refugee, she was a visionary. Under her leadership, Carthage grew into a thriving hub of trade, its ports bustling with ships carrying goods from across the known world. Dido's story, though embellished over time, reflects the real-world influence women could wield, even in societies that often marginalized them. In China, another remarkable figure emerges from the annals of maritime history: Huang Diapo. Born in the 13th century, Huang was a skilled weaver who revolutionized the textile industry. After escaping an abusive marriage, she traveled to Hainan, where she learned advanced cotton spinning techniques from the local Lai people. Upon returning to her hometown, she introduced these innovations, transforming the region into a center of textile production. Her contributions didn't just boost local economies, they played a key role in the broader trade networks that connected China to the rest of the world. Textiles were a cornerstone of maritime trade, and Huang's work ensured that Chinese silk and cotton remained highly sought-after commodities. But it wasn't just the famous names who shaped maritime trade. Countless unnamed women contributed in ways that were just as vital, if less celebrated. In port cities across the ancient world, women ran market stalls, managed family businesses, and crafted goods for export. In places like ancient Egypt, women could own ships and even serve as merchants, trading goods along the Nile and beyond. In the Indian Ocean, women played key roles in the spice trade, processing and packaging the precious cargo that would travel thousands of miles. And in the Mediterranean, women were often the backbone of the textile industry, weaving the fabrics that became a staple of trade. What's striking is how these women navigated not just the physical challenges of trade, but the social ones as well. In many ancient societies, women faced significant restrictions on their roles and mobility. Yet, through resourcefulness and determination, they found ways to participate in and even shape the networks that connected the world. Their stories challenged the notion that maritime trade was a male-dominated sphere, revealing a more nuanced and inclusive picture of the past. The legacy of these women is a reminder that history is rarely as simple as it seems. Behind every ship, every port, and every trade route were countless individuals whose contributions have been overlooked. By bringing their stories to light, we not only enrich our understanding of the past, but also honor the diverse voices that shaped it. The role of women in ancient maritime trade is a testament to the power of persistence and the enduring impact of those who dared to defy the odds. And as we continue to explore the mysteries of the ancient world, their stories remind us that the sea, for all its vastness, was never too wide to be bridged by human ingenuity and courage. The rhythm of the ancient world wasn't just dictated by kings and merchants, it was shaped by the forces of nature. Climate, with its unpredictable moods and transformative power, played a pivotal role in the rise and fall of maritime trade networks. From the shifting monsoons of the Indian Ocean to the volcanic eruptions that reshaped the Mediterranean, the environment was both a partner and a rival in the quest for connection. Understanding how ancient civilizations navigated these challenges offers a fascinating glimpse into their resilience, and perhaps even some lessons for our own era of climate uncertainty. Take the monsoons, for example. These seasonal winds were the lifeblood of trade in the Indian Ocean, but they were also a force to be reckoned with. Ancient mariners learned to time their voyages carefully, setting sail when the winds would carry them swiftly to their destinations, but the monsoons weren't always predictable. A delayed or erratic monsoon season could strand ships in port, disrupting the flow of goods and leaving merchants scrambling to adapt. In response, traders developed a deep understanding of weather patterns, using their knowledge to mitigate risks and seize opportunities. This wasn't just survival, it was a form of collaboration with nature, a delicate balancing act that required both skill and humility. In the Mediterranean, the challenges were different but no less daunting. Volcanic eruptions like the catastrophic explosion of Thera around 1600 BCE could reshape entire landscapes. The eruption not only devastated the nearby Minon civilization, but also sent shockwaves through the region's trade networks. Ash clouds darkened the skies, tsunamis battered coastal settlements, and the fallout disrupted agriculture, leading to food shortages and economic instability. Yet, even in the face of such devastation, societies found ways to rebuild. The Minon's trading partners, though affected, continued to seek new routes and opportunities, demonstrating a remarkable capacity for adaptation. Sea levels, too, played a role in shaping trade. In places like the Nile Delta, where the city of Thonis Heracleion once thrived, rising waters and shifting sediments could transform bustling ports into submerged ruins. For ancient civilizations, these changes weren't just environmental challenges, they were existential threats. Yet they responded with ingenuity, relocating ports, rerouting trade paths, and innovating new technologies to navigate the changing landscape. The story of Thonis Heracleion, with its rise and eventual submersion, is a poignant reminder of both the fragility and resilience of human endeavors. What's striking is how these ancient responses to climate challenges mirror our own struggles today. Like the merchants of old, we're grappling with rising sea levels, unpredictable weather, and the cascading effects of environmental change. The difference, of course, is the scale. Ancient societies operated on a smaller stage, but their lessons are no less relevant. They remind us that adaptation isn't just about survival, it's about finding ways to thrive in the face of uncertainty. The interplay between climate and commerce in the ancient world is a testament to the enduring relationship between humanity and the environment. It's a story of resilience, creativity, and the unyielding spirit of those who dared to navigate the unknown. And as we face our own climate challenges, their stories offer not just inspiration, but a roadmap for building a more sustainable future. After all, the seas may rise, the winds may shift, but the human capacity for innovation remains as boundless as the ocean itself. If the ancient seas were the highways of trade, then ports were the bustling intersections where the world came together. These vibrant hubs were more than just places to load and unload goods. They were melting pots of culture, innovation, and human connection. From the sun-drenched docks of Alexandria to the fog-shrouded quays of the Hanseatic League, ports were the beating hearts of maritime trade, pulsing with the energy of merchants, sailors, and travelers from every corner of the known world. At their core, ports were marvels of engineering and organization. Building a thriving port wasn't just about finding a good harbor, it required careful planning and innovation. Docks had to be sturdy enough to withstand the constant battering of waves, while warehouses needed to store goods securely, protecting them from the elements and theft. In Alexandria, for example, the famous Pharaoh's lighthouse wasn't just a navigational aid, it was a symbol of the city's mastery over the sea, guiding ships safely into its harbors. Meanwhile, the Romans took port infrastructure to new heights, constructing massive breakwaters and quays that could accommodate hundreds of ships at once. These feats of engineering weren't just practical, they were statements of power, showcasing the wealth and ambition of the civilizations that built them. But ports were more than just physical spaces. They were governed by rules and systems that kept trade flowing smoothly. Customs officials monitored incoming goods, collecting taxes, and ensuring that nothing illegal slipped through. In ancient Rome, the portus near Ostia was a meticulously managed hub where goods were catalogued, stored, and distributed across the empire. Similarly, in the Indian Ocean, ports like Calicut had strict regulations to maintain order, with local officials overseeing transactions and resolving disputes. This blend of governance and infrastructure made ports efficient, reliable, and attractive to traders from far and wide. What truly set ports apart, though, was their role as cultural crossroads. Imagine walking through the markets of ancient Tyre, where Phoenician merchants haggled with Greek traders over bolts of fine cloth, or strolling along the docks of Guangzhou, where Chinese silks mingled with Arabian spices. These interactions weren't just about commerce, they were exchanges of ideas, languages, and traditions. In Alexandria, the Great Library became a symbol of this intellectual exchange, drawing scholars from across the Mediterranean to share knowledge and debate ideas. Ports were places where cultures collided and blended, creating a vibrant tapestry of human experience. The legacy of these ancient ports is still visible today. Modern cities like Istanbul, Singapore, and New York owe their prominence to their historical roles as maritime hubs. The principles that made ancient ports successful strategic location, robust infrastructure, and a spirit of openness continue to shape global trade. But beyond their economic impact, these ports remind us of something deeper, the power of connection. They were places where strangers became neighbors, where goods and ideas flowed freely, and where the world felt a little smaller. As we look back at these ancient hubs, it's impossible not to marvel at their enduring influence. They weren't just lifelines of trade, they were the glue that held civilizations together, proving that even the vastest oceans can be bridged by human ingenuity and cooperation. The story of ancient ports is a testament to the enduring power of connection, a lesson that resonates just as strongly in our interconnected world today. Beneath the glittering surface of ancient maritime trade, where goods like spices, silks, and gold flowed freely, there was a darker current, one that carried human lives. Slavery was not just a grim footnote in the history of trade. It was a cornerstone of the ancient economy, woven into the very fabric of maritime networks. From the bustling ports of the Roman Empire to the spice-laden ships of the Indian Ocean, enslaved people were transported alongside cargo, their labor and lives fueling the economies of the ancient world. Yet, their stories are more than just tales of exploitation. They are powerful reminders of resilience, resistance, and the human cost of progress. The Roman Empire, with its vast network of trade routes, relied heavily on enslaved labor to sustain its economy. Ships crisscrossing the Mediterranean carried not only olive oil, wine, and grain, but also thousands of enslaved individuals captured in wars or sold by traders. These men, women, and children were often subjected to brutal conditions, working in mines, fields, or households far from their homelands, yet their contributions were indispensable. Enslaved laborers built the infrastructure that made trade possible: roads, ports, and warehouses, while also serving as rowers on ships, cooks in markets, and artisans crafting goods for export. Their forced labor was the invisible engine that kept the empire's trade networks running. In the Indian Ocean, slavery took on a different character but was no less pervasive. Arab and Persian merchants who dominated the region's trade transported enslaved people from East Africa to the Middle East and beyond. These individuals, often captured in raids or sold by local rulers, were valued for their skills as sailors, pearl divers, and domestic workers. Some even rose to positions of influence, serving as advisors or administrators in the courts of powerful rulers. Yet their status as property was never forgotten, and their lives were marked by the constant threat of violence and exploitation. What's often overlooked is the agency of enslaved individuals, even within the confines of their oppression. In the Roman world, some enslaved people managed to buy their freedom, becoming merchants or artisans who contributed to the very trade networks that once exploited them. In the Indian Ocean, enslaved sailors played a crucial role in navigating the treacherous waters, their knowledge of winds and currents often proving invaluable. These stories of resilience and adaptation remind us that even in the face of unimaginable hardship, the human spirit endures. Slavery also had profound social and economic implications. In ancient Rome, the wealth generated by enslaved labor allowed elites to amass fortunes, funding lavish lifestyles and ambitious building projects. This wealth disparity created a rigid social hierarchy, with enslaved people at the bottom and little opportunity for upward mobility. In the Indian Ocean, the demand for enslaved labor fueled conflicts and destabilized regions as rival powers competed for control of this lucrative trade. The legacy of these systems is still felt today, as the echoes of ancient slavery reverberate through modern societies. Yet, the story of slavery in maritime trade is not just one of exploitation, it's also a story of connection. Enslaved individuals, despite their suffering, played a vital role in bridging cultures and spreading ideas. They brought with them knowledge, traditions, and skills that enriched the societies they were forced to serve. Their presence in ports and markets, aboard ships and in workshops, created a complex web of interactions that shaped the ancient world in ways we are only beginning to understand. As we reflect on this chapter of history, it's essential to confront the uncomfortable truths it reveals. The prosperity and innovation of ancient maritime trade came at a tremendous human cost, one that cannot be ignored. By acknowledging the role of slavery in these networks, we not only honor the memory of those who suffered, but also gain a deeper understanding of the forces that shaped our world. The story of slavery in maritime trade is a stark reminder that progress often comes at a price, and that the true measure of a civilization lies in how it treats its most vulnerable. The story of ancient maritime trade isn't just one of daring sailors and exotic goods, it's also a tale of remarkable ingenuity. Behind every successful voyage was a suite of technological innovations that made the impossible possible. From the earliest days of seafaring, humans have pushed the boundaries of what their tools and knowledge could achieve, transforming the seas from barriers into bridges. The evolution of maritime technology didn't just change how goods moved, it reshaped the world, opening new horizons for exploration, enabling new forms of warfare, and fostering cultural connections that spanned continents. One of the most transformative inventions in maritime history was the sail. Before its development, early sailors relied on oars and muscle power to propel their boats, limiting how far they could travel and how much they could carry. But with the advent of sails, everything changed. By harnessing the power of the wind, ships could travel faster, farther, and with greater efficiency. The Phoenicians, masters of the Mediterranean, were among the first to perfect the use of square sails, which allowed their vessels to catch the wind more effectively. This innovation not only expanded their trade networks but also set the stage for future advancements in ship design. Over time, triangular lateen sails emerged, offering even greater maneuverability and making it possible to sail against the wind, a game-changer for navigating unpredictable waters. Equally important was the development of hull design. Early boats, often little more than hollowed-out logs, were limited in size and stability. But as shipbuilders experimented with new materials and techniques, they began crafting vessels that could withstand the rigors of the open sea. The Minons, for example, built ships with reinforced keels and sturdy planks, allowing them to venture beyond the safety of coastal waters. These innovations weren't just about survival, they were about ambition. With each improvement, ships could carry more cargo, travel greater distances, and explore new territories, fueling the growth of trade networks that span the globe. Navigation tools also played a crucial role in the success of ancient maritime trade. Before the invention of the compass, sailors relied on the stars, the sun, and natural landmarks to find their way. The Polynesians, for instance, developed an intricate system of celestial navigation, using the positions of stars and the patterns of waves to chart their course across the vast Pacific. In the Mediterranean, sailors used the North Star as a fixed point of reference, while the Phoenicians created rudimentary maps to guide their voyages. But the real revolution came with the magnetic compass, which emerged in China during the Han Dynasty. This simple yet ingenious device allowed sailors to determine direction even in overcast conditions, dramatically improving the safety and reliability of long-distance travel. The impact of these technological advancements extended far beyond trade. Ships equipped with sails and sturdy hulls became powerful tools of exploration, enabling civilizations to expand their reach and discover new lands. They also transformed warfare, as navies armed with advanced ships could project power across vast distances. The triremes of ancient Greece, with their sleek design and rows of oars, became symbols of military might, while the massive warships of Rome patrolled the Mediterranean, protecting trade routes and asserting imperial dominance. Even cultural exchange was shaped by these innovations, as ships carried not only goods but also ideas, art, and religion across the seas. Yet, the true genius of ancient maritime technology lies in its adaptability. Each civilization built on the knowledge of those who came before, refining designs and techniques to suit their needs. The Chinese, for example, developed the sternpost rudder, which gave ships greater control and stability, while Arab traders introduced the astrolabe, a sophisticated instrument for measuring the angle of celestial bodies. These innovations weren't just isolated achievements, they were part of a continuous process of learning and improvement that spanned centuries and crossed cultural boundaries. As we look back on these ancient marvels, it's impossible not to be struck by the creativity and resourcefulness of those who shaped them. The technologies that powered ancient maritime trade weren't just tools, they were expressions of human curiosity and determination, proof that even the greatest challenges can be overcome with ingenuity and collaboration. And as we continue to explore the mysteries of the past, these innovations remind us that the spirit of discovery is as boundless as the sea itself. While the winds and waves carried ships across the ancient seas, it was diplomacy that often guided their course. In a world where trade routes spanned vast distances and crossed myriad cultures, maintaining peaceful and productive relationships was no small feat. Diplomacy wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity. Treaties, alliances, and carefully crafted agreements formed the backbone of maritime trade, ensuring that goods could flow freely and that conflicts didn't derail the delicate balance of commerce. From the bustling ports of the Mediterranean to the sprawling markets of the Indian Ocean, diplomacy was the unseen hand that kept trade networks thriving. The Phoenicians, masters of the Mediterranean, understood this better than most. Their success wasn't just built on sturdy ships and skilled sailors, it was also rooted in their ability to forge alliances. Phoenician city-states like Tyre and Sidon often negotiated treaties with neighboring powers, securing safe passage for their merchants and favorable terms for their goods. These agreements weren't just about trade, they were about survival. In a region where rivalries and territorial disputes were common, diplomacy provided a way to navigate the complexities of politics and power. Phoenician envoys, armed with gifts and persuasive words, played a key role in building these relationships, acting as bridges between cultures and ensuring that their ships could sail unhindered. In the Indian Ocean, diplomacy took on a different flavor but was no less critical. The Monsoon trade routes connected diverse civilizations from the Arab world to India and beyond, creating a web of interactions that required careful management. Here, the role of interpreters and cultural mediators was indispensable. These individuals, often multilingual and well-versed in the customs of multiple cultures, facilitated communication between traders and rulers, smoothing over misunderstandings and negotiating terms that benefited all parties. In some cases, royal decrees were issued to protect foreign merchants, granting them special privileges or exemptions from taxes. These acts of goodwill weren't just gestures. They were strategic moves designed to attract trade and strengthen alliances. China's approach to maritime diplomacy was equally sophisticated. During the Tang Dynasty, the government actively promoted trade by sending envoys to distant lands, carrying gifts and messages of friendship. These missions weren't just about commerce, they were about projecting power and prestige. By establishing diplomatic ties with states across Southeast Asia and the Indian Ocean, the Tang court ensured that Chinese goods, especially silk and porcelain, remained in high demand. At the same time, they welcomed foreign traders into their ports, offering them protection and incentives to do business. This two-way exchange of goods and goodwill created a thriving network that benefited both China and its trading partners. What's fascinating is how diplomacy often blurred the lines between politics and commerce. In the ancient world, trade wasn't just an economic activity, it was a form of statecraft. Alliances forged through trade could lead to military partnerships, while conflicts over trade routes could spark wars. The Roman Empire, for example, used its naval power to protect its trade interests, even as it negotiated treaties with rival states to ensure the flow of grain and other essential goods. Similarly, the Abbasid Caliphate leveraged its control of key ports like Hormuz to exert influence over the Indian Ocean trade, using diplomacy to maintain its dominance. The legacy of ancient trade diplomacy is a reminder that commerce has always been about more than just goods. It's about relationships. The treaties, envoys, and royal decrees that shaped maritime trade reveal a world where politics and economics were deeply intertwined, where the art of negotiation was as important as the skill of navigation. These diplomatic efforts didn't just secure safe passage for ships, they created a framework for cooperation that allowed civilizations to flourish. As we look back on these ancient strategies, it's impossible not to see parallels in our own world. The challenges of navigating complex relationships, balancing competing interests, and fostering mutual trust are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. The story of diplomacy in ancient trade is a testament to the enduring power of connection and a reminder that even the most ambitious ventures are built on the foundation of human relationships. As ships sailed across the ancient seas, they carried more than just cargo, they carried stories. Mythology and maritime trade were inseparable, woven together in a tapestry of gods, heroes, and legends that mirrored the triumphs and trials of seafaring life. These tales weren't just entertainment, they were a way for ancient cultures to make sense of the vast, unpredictable ocean and the journeys it demanded. From the storm-tossed voyages of Greek heroes to the celestial wisdom of Polynesian navigators, myths served as both guides and warnings, embedding the wisdom of the sea into the hearts of those who ventured upon it. Take the story of Odysseus, one of the most enduring figures in Greek mythology. His epic journey home after the Trojan War, immortalized in Homer's Odyssey, is a vivid reflection of the challenges faced by ancient sailors. Odysseus encounters mythical creatures like the sirens, whose enchanting songs lured sailors to their doom, and the whirlpool monster Charybdis, which symbolized the treacherous currents that could swallow ships whole. These elements weren't just fantastical embellishments, they were metaphors for the very real dangers of the Mediterranean. The Odyssey wasn't just a tale of adventure, it was a survival manual teaching sailors how to navigate both the sea and the human heart. Across the Pacific, Polynesian mythology offers a different but equally profound perspective on maritime life. The demigod Maui, celebrated in countless legends, is a central figure in these stories. In one famous tale, Maui uses his magical fishhook to pull the Hawaiian Islands from the depths of the ocean, a metaphor for the Polynesians' ability to discover and settle new land. But Maui's stories go beyond creation myths. They also reflect the Polynesians' deep understanding of the natural world. Legends about Maui slowing the sun or capturing the winds weren't just imaginative storytelling. They encoded vital knowledge about celestial navigation and weather patterns, passed down through generations to ensure safe voyages. Mythology also played a role in shaping the identity of seafaring cultures. In the Mediterranean, Poseidon, the god of the sea, was both revered and feared. Sailors offered prayers and sacrifices to appease him, hoping for calm waters and favorable winds. Yet Poseidon's unpredictable temper, epitomized by his storms and earthquakes, served as a reminder of the sea's power and the need for humility. Similarly, in Norse mythology, the sea god Njord was a protector of sailors, but his domain was also home to the fearsome kraken, a symbol of the ocean's unfathomable dangers. These deities weren't just figures of worship, they were reflections of the sea itself, both life-giving and perilous. What's fascinating is how these myths transcended their cultural origins, creating a shared language of the sea that connected distant civilizations. The Greek story of the Argonauts, for example, tells of a voyage to retrieve the Golden Fleece, a journey that took them through the Black Sea and into unknown waters. This tale, like many others, highlights the spirit of exploration that drove ancient mariners, blending myth and reality in a way that inspired generations of sailors to push the boundaries of the known world. But myths weren't just about inspiration, they were also about caution. The story of Icarus, who flew too close to the sun and fell into the sea, serves as a timeless warning against hubris. For sailors, the message was clear: respect the sea's power or face the consequences. Similarly, Polynesian legends often emphasize the importance of preparation and teamwork, reminding voyagers that success depended on both skill and cooperation. These lessons weren't just moral, they were practical, ensuring that the wisdom of the past informed the decisions of the present. The enduring power of these myths lies in their ability to capture the essence of maritime trade, not just as an economic activity, but as a human experience. They remind us that the sea was more than a highway for goods. It was a source of wonder, danger, and connection. Through myths, ancient cultures celebrated their achievements, confronted their fears, and preserved the knowledge that allowed them to thrive. As we explore these stories today, we're not just uncovering ancient beliefs, we're rediscovering a shared heritage that transcends time and place. The myths of Odysseus and Maui, Poseidon and Enjord, continue to resonate because they speak to something universal: the human desire to explore, to understand, and to connect. And in a world where the sea still holds so many mysteries, these ancient tales remind us that the journey is as important as the destination. Among the countless treasures carried across ancient seas, few commodities were as essential or as transformative as food. From the grain that fed empires to the spices that flavored distant cuisines, food wasn't just a product of trade, it was the lifeblood of civilizations. Imagine a Roman merchant ship, its hold packed with amphorae of olive oil and sacks of grain, sailing across the Mediterranean to feed the growing metropolis of Rome. Or picture an Arab dhow, its deck laden with cinnamon and pepper, navigating the monsoon winds to bring these precious spices to eager markets in the Middle East. Food was more than sustenance, it was a bridge between cultures, a catalyst for connection, and a driving force behind the rise of maritime trade networks. The Roman Empire's reliance on grain illustrates just how vital food was to ancient economies. With its massive population, Rome couldn't produce enough grain to feed its people, so it turned to the sea. Ships laden with wheat from Egypt and North Africa became the lifeline of the empire, ensuring that bread, the staple of the Roman diet, was always on the table. This wasn't just a logistical feat, it was a political necessity. The phrase "bread and circuses" didn't just capture the priorities of Roman citizens, it underscored the importance of food in maintaining stability. The grain trade was so critical that the Roman government took extraordinary measures to protect it, from building massive ports like Ostia to deploying fleets to guard against pirates. Without this maritime network, Rome itself might have crumbled, but food wasn't just about survival, it was also about pleasure and prestige. Olive oil, another cornerstone of Mediterranean trade, was prized not only for its culinary uses but also for its role in lighting lamps and even in religious rituals. Greek and Roman olive oil was exported far and wide, reaching as far as Britain and India. Similarly, wine, often transported in distinctive amphorae, became a symbol of wealth and sophistication. From the vineyards of Italy to the banquet halls of Persia, wine was more than a drink. It was a cultural export carrying with it the tastes and traditions of its homeland. In the Indian Ocean, the spice trade took center stage. Spices like cinnamon, pepper, and cardamom weren't just flavor enhancers, they were status symbols and even medicinal remedies. The demand for these precious commodities drove ships across vast distances, connecting the markets of India with those of Arabia, Persia, and beyond. The spice trade wasn't just lucrative, it was transformative. It introduced new flavors to distant cuisines, sparking a culinary revolution that reshaped diets across the ancient world. Imagine a Roman chef experimenting with Indian pepper for the first time, or an Arab merchant savoring the aroma of Chinese cinnamon. These exchanges weren't just about taste, they were about discovery and connection. What's often overlooked is how food trade shaped not just economies but identities. The exchange of ingredients and culinary traditions created a shared culinary heritage that transcended borders. In the Mediterranean, for example, the spread of olive oil and wine created a common gastronomic language that united diverse cultures. In Southeast Asia, the introduction of Indian spices and Chinese cooking techniques gave rise to unique fusion cuisines that are still enjoyed today. Even the humble grain trade, often seen as purely functional, had cultural implications. The Roman appetite for Egyptian wheat, for instance, wasn't just about filling stomachs, it was about integrating distant regions into a shared imperial identity. The story of food in ancient maritime trade is a reminder that some of the most profound connections are made at the table. It's a story of necessity and luxury, of survival and celebration, of how something as simple as a grain of wheat or a pinch of pepper could weave together the fabric of the ancient world. As we trace the journey of these staples across the seas, we're not just exploring the history of trade, we're uncovering the roots of the globalized world we live in today. And in doing so, we're reminded that the act of sharing a meal, or even the ingredients that make it possible, is one of the most enduring ways we connect as human beings. The movement of goods across ancient seas wasn't just about spices, silk, and gold. It was also about beauty, expression, and identity. Art and culture were both the products and the engines of maritime trade, weaving a rich tapestry of creativity that connected distant civilizations. From the vibrant frescoes of Minon palaces to the delicate porcelain of Tang Dynasty China, artistic creations were among the most coveted treasures carried by ancient ships. But these objects weren't just commodities, they were vessels of meaning carrying stories, beliefs, and innovations from one corner of the world to another. Take Greek pottery, for example. Known for its intricate designs and vivid storytelling, this art form became a staple of Mediterranean trade. Amphorae, large jars used to transport goods like olive oil and wine, were often adorned with scenes from mythology or daily life. These designs weren't just decorative, they were a form of communication, conveying cultural values and narratives to anyone who saw them. Imagine a Roman merchant unearthing a Greek amphora in a distant port, marveling at the craftsmanship and the stories it told. This wasn't just a transaction, it was a moment of cultural exchange where art became a bridge between worlds. In China, silk paintings and calligraphy were equally prized, not only for their aesthetic beauty but also for their spiritual significance. Silk, one of China's most celebrated exports, was often used as a canvas for intricate paintings that depicted landscapes, religious themes, or poetic inscriptions. These works of art were highly sought after, not just for their material value but for the ideas and emotions they conveyed. When Chinese silk paintings reached Persia or Byzantium, they didn't just decorate palaces, they inspired local artists, sparking new styles and techniques that blended Eastern and Western traditions. The exchange of artistic ideas wasn't limited to physical objects. Maritime trade also facilitated the movement of craftsmen, artists, and scholars who brought their skills and knowledge to new lands. In the Mediterranean, for instance, the spread of Greek artistic techniques influenced the art of the Etruscans and Romans, leading to the creation of new styles like Hellenistic sculpture. Similarly, the arrival of Indian artisans in Southeast Asia introduced Buddhist iconography and temple architecture, leaving a lasting legacy in places like Cambodia and Indonesia. These interactions weren't just about imitation, they were about innovation as artists adapted and reimagined foreign influences to create something uniquely their own. Art also played a crucial role in diplomacy and religion, two pillars of ancient society. Gifts of artistic objects were often used to cement alliances or demonstrate goodwill between rulers. A finely crafted statue or a beautifully woven tapestry could convey respect, power, and cultural sophistication, making it a powerful tool in the hands of diplomats. At the same time, religious art, whether a Greek statue of Athena or a Buddhist stupa in Sri Lanka, served as a focal point for spiritual life, connecting communities across vast distances through shared beliefs and practices. The impact of this cultural exchange extended far beyond the elite. In the bustling markets of ancient ports, ordinary people encountered foreign art in the form of pottery, textiles, and jewelry. These objects weren't just decorative, they were everyday reminders of the wider world, sparking curiosity and broadening horizons. A Roman woman wearing a necklace of Indian pearls or a Chinese merchant drinking from a Persian glass wasn't just making a fashion statement. They were participating in a global network of ideas and creativity. What's truly remarkable is how these artistic exchanges created a shared cultural heritage that transcended borders. The motifs of Greek pottery might appear in Etruscan designs, while Indian Buddhist art could influence the architecture of Southeast Asian temples. This blending of styles and traditions wasn't just a byproduct of trade, it was a testament to the power of art to connect people, even across vast distances and cultural divides. As we explore the role of art in ancient maritime trade, it's impossible not to be struck by its enduring legacy. The pottery, paintings, and sculptures carried by ancient ships weren't just objects, they were expressions of human creativity and connection. They remind us that trade has always been about more than goods. It's about the stories we share, the beauty we create, and the ways we come together to enrich our world. And in a time when the world feels more connected than ever, these ancient exchanges offer a powerful reminder of the enduring power of art to unite us. The shimmering seas of the ancient world were not always peaceful highways of commerce, they were also battlegrounds. War and trade, two forces that might seem at odds, were deeply intertwined in the ancient world, each shaping the other in ways that reverberated across civilizations. Naval warfare wasn't just about conquest or defense. It was a tool for controlling the lifeblood of economies' trade routes. From the fierce clashes of the Peloponnesian War to the sweeping conquests of Alexander the Great, conflict on the water reshaped the flow of goods, the balance of power, and the very structure of ancient societies. To understand maritime trade in the ancient world, we must also understand the wars that both protected and threatened it. Take the Peloponnesian War, for instance, a decades-long struggle between Athens and Sparta in the 5th century BC. At its core, this conflict was as much about controlling trade routes as it was about political dominance. Athens, with its powerful navy, relied heavily on maritime trade to sustain its empire. Grain from the Black Sea, timber from Macedonia, and silver from its mines all flowed through its ports, making the Aegean Sea a lifeline for the city-state. But this reliance on trade also made Athens vulnerable. When Sparta and its allies disrupted these routes, Athens faced food shortages and economic strain, tipping the balance of power. The war wasn't just fought on land, it was fought on the waves, where control of the sea meant control of survival. Alexander the Great's conquests offer another striking example of how war and trade were inseparable. His campaigns didn't just expand his empire, they opened new trade routes that connected the Mediterranean world with the riches of the East. After his victory at the Battle of Issus, Alexander seized control of key ports in the eastern Mediterranean, securing access to resources and markets that fueled his further campaigns. But his ambitions went beyond conquest. Alexander founded cities like Alexandria in Egypt, strategically located to serve as hubs of trade and culture. These cities became nexuses of exchange, where goods, ideas, and people flowed freely, creating a network that outlasted his empire. Alexander understood that to rule the world, he had to control its trade. Yet, war wasn't just a driver of trade, it was also a disruptor. The rise and fall of empires often meant the rise and fall of trade routes. When the Roman Republic clashed with Carthage in the Punic Wars, the Mediterranean became a theater of naval warfare, with control of its waters hanging in the balance. The destruction of Carthage not only eliminated a rival, but also gave Rome dominance over key trade routes, allowing it to expand its economic and political influence. But conflict could also bring chaos. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century CE led to the fragmentation of trade networks as pirates and raiders made the seas unsafe for merchants. The flow of goods slowed, and the once thriving ports of the Mediterranean fell into decline. What's fascinating is how war could both destroy and create opportunities. When one power fell, another often rose to take its place. The Phoenicians, for example, faced constant threats from rival powers, yet their strategic alliances and naval prowess allowed them to maintain their trade networks for centuries. Similarly, the rise of the Byzantine Empire in the eastern Mediterranean after the fall of Rome created new hubs of trade, as Constantinople became a crossroads of commerce between East and West. Conflict, in this sense, wasn't just a force of destruction, it was a catalyst for reinvention. The lessons of ancient maritime warfare are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. The interplay between trade and conflict reminds us that economic power is often tied to control of resources and routes. It also underscores the fragility of global networks, which can be disrupted by war, piracy, or political instability. But perhaps most importantly, it highlights the resilience of human ingenuity. Even in the face of upheaval, ancient civilizations found ways to adapt, rebuild, and thrive. As we reflect on the role of war in ancient maritime trade, we're reminded that the seas have always been more than just a backdrop for history. They've been a stage where the forces of commerce and conflict have played out in dramatic and often unexpected ways. The battles fought on these waters weren't just about power, they were about survival, connection, and the enduring human drive to navigate the unknown. And in understanding their stories, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complex forces that have shaped our world. The vast, uncharted waters of the ancient world were not barriers, they were invitations. For the courageous sailors who dared to venture into the unknown, the sea was a frontier brimming with possibility. Exploration wasn't just a byproduct of maritime trade, it was its beating heart. From the Phoenicians, who mapped the coasts of Africa, to the Polynesians, who traversed the vast Pacific, these ancient explorers were driven by a mix of curiosity, necessity, and the relentless pursuit of opportunity. Their journeys didn't just expand trade networks, they reshaped the world, proving that the desire to explore is as old as humanity itself. The Phoenicians stand out as some of the most intrepid explorers of the ancient world. Around 600 BC, they embarked on a voyage that would become legendary, the circumnavigation of Africa. Commissioned by the Egyptian pharaoh Necho Roman II, this expedition was a monumental feat of navigation and endurance. Sailing south from the Red Sea, the Phoenicians hugged the African coastline, braving storms, treacherous currents, and the unknown. It took them 3 years to complete the journey, but when they returned, they brought with them not just tales of strange lands and peoples, but a wealth of knowledge that would shape Mediterranean trade for centuries. This wasn't just exploration for exploration's sake. It was a calculated effort to unlock new trade routes and resources, proving that the risks of venturing into the unknown could yield extraordinary rewards. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, the Polynesians were undertaking their own remarkable journeys. With no written language or advanced instruments, these master navigators relied on their deep understanding of the natural world to traverse the Pacific, one of the most expansive and unforgiving oceans on Earth. Using the stars, the flight patterns of birds, and even the subtle shifts in ocean swells, they discovered and settled islands scattered across thousands of miles of open water. Their voyages weren't just about finding new land, they were about creating connections. Each new island became a node in a vast network of trade and cultural exchange, where goods, ideas, and traditions flowed freely. The Polynesians' ability to navigate such vast distances with nothing but their knowledge and intuition remains one of the most astonishing achievements in human history. But what drove these explorers to take such risks? The answer lies in a combination of ambition and necessity. For the Phoenicians, exploration was a means of securing their dominance in the Mediterranean trade. By discovering new routes and resources, they could outmaneuver their rivals and strengthen their economy. For the Polynesians, the motivation was more existential. As their islands grew crowded, they sought new lands to settle, driven by a mix of resource scarcity and the human instinct to seek out new horizons. Both groups understood that exploration wasn't just about discovery, it was about survival. The challenges these explorers faced were immense. Unpredictable weather, treacherous coastlines, and the constant threat of shipwreck were ever-present dangers. Yet, their achievements reveal a profound truth. Exploration is as much about innovation as it is about courage. The Phoenicians' advanced shipbuilding techniques and the Polynesians' celestial navigation skills were born out of necessity, but they became the foundation for future generations of explorers. These innovations didn't just make exploration possible, they made it transformative, opening up new possibilities for trade, cultural exchange, and human connection. The legacy of these ancient explorers is still with us today. Their journeys remind us that the desire to explore is a fundamental part of who we are. It's a drive that has propelled humanity across oceans, continents, and even into space. And while the tools and technologies have changed, the spirit of exploration remains the same. A relentless curiosity, a willingness to take risks, and an unshakable belief that the unknown holds something worth discovering. As we look back on their stories, we're reminded that exploration isn't just about reaching new places, it's about expanding our understanding of the world and our place within it. The ancient explorers who charted the seas didn't just connect distant lands, they connected people, ideas, and dreams, and in doing so, they laid the groundwork for the interconnected world we live in today. Their journeys are a testament to the enduring power of human curiosity, and a reminder that the greatest adventures often begin with a single step into the unknown. Language was the invisible thread that stitched together the vast tapestry of ancient maritime trade. In a world where ships carried goods across thousands of miles, connecting civilizations as diverse as the Greeks, Egyptians, and Chinese, communication was as vital as the cargo itself. Without a shared means of understanding, trade would have faltered, and the intricate networks that spanned the seas would have unraveled. But how did merchants from vastly different cultures bridge the gap of language? The answer lies in the rise of lingua franca's common languages that allowed traders to negotiate record transactions and build trust across linguistic divides. Greek, for instance, emerged as a dominant lingua franca in the Mediterranean during the Hellenistic period. After the conquests of Alexander the Great, Greek culture and language spread far and wide, becoming the common tongue of merchants, diplomats, and scholars. In bustling ports like Alexandria and Ephesus, a Phoenician trader might haggle over the price of olive oil with an Egyptian merchant, both speaking Greek to seal the deal. This shared language didn't just make commerce easier, it fostered a sense of unity across diverse cultures, creating a framework for cooperation that transcended borders. In the Indian Ocean, Arabic played a similar role. As Arab merchants dominated the spice trade, their language became the go-to medium for communication in ports from East Africa to Southeast Asia. Arabic wasn't just spoken, it was written, with traders using it to draft contracts, record inventories, and even compose poetry. The spread of Arabic as a lingua franca wasn't just a byproduct of trade, it was a cultural force shaping the identities of the regions it touched. For centuries, Arabic script adorned everything from ship manifests to religious texts, leaving an indelible mark on the history of maritime trade. But language wasn't just about spoken words, it was also about writing. The Phoenicians, renowned for their seafaring prowess, made one of the most enduring contributions to human communication, the alphabet. Before the Phoenician script, writing systems were often complex and limited to scribes and elites. The Phoenician alphabet, with its simple, adaptable characters, revolutionized written communication, making it accessible to ordinary people. This innovation didn't just stay in the Mediterranean. It traveled with Phoenician traders, influencing Greek, Latin, and eventually the scripts we use today. Writing became a tool of trade, enabling merchants to keep records, draft agreements, and send messages across vast distances. The exchange of languages and scripts through trade wasn't just a practical necessity, it was a cultural phenomenon. When a Chinese merchant learned a few words of Arabic or a Roman trader picked up some Greek, they weren't just facilitating transactions, they were participating in a broader exchange of ideas. Languages carried with them stories, beliefs, and worldviews, shaping the way people understood each other and their place in the world. This linguistic fusion created hybrid forms of communication, like the pidgin languages that emerged in busy ports, blending elements of multiple tongues into a new, shared vocabulary. What's fascinating is how these linguistic exchanges often went beyond trade. In places where cultures collided, languages evolved, giving rise to new dialects and even entirely new scripts. The spread of Buddhism, for example, brought Indian scripts like Brahmi to Southeast Asia, where they influenced the development of local writing systems. Similarly, the Arabic script was adapted to write languages as diverse as Persian, Urdu, and Malay, creating a shared cultural heritage that spanned continents. The role of language in ancient maritime trade is a reminder that communication is more than just a tool. It's a bridge. It connects people, cultures, and ideas, transforming the way we interact and understand each other. The languages and scripts that traveled the ancient seas weren't just about commerce, they were about connection. And in a world where the ocean could be both a barrier and a highway, language was the key that unlocked its potential. As we reflect on this chapter of history, it's impossible not to see parallels in our own globalized world. The rise of lingua francas like English and the spread of digital communication tools echo the linguistic exchanges of the past, reminding us that the challenges and opportunities of connection are timeless. The story of language in ancient maritime trade is a testament to the power of words, not just to convey meaning, but to build bridges across the vast and unpredictable seas of human experience. Long before the rise of digital wallets and credit cards, the bustling markets of ancient ports relied on something far more tangible, currency. But money, as we know it today, didn't always exist. In the early days of maritime trade, transactions were far simpler and far more personal. Picture a Phoenician merchant bartering a jar of olive oil for a bolt of Egyptian linen, or a Chinese trader exchanging bundles of silk for sacks of grain. This system of barter worked well enough when trade was local, but as networks expanded across seas and continents, a more efficient solution was needed. Enter currency, a revolutionary innovation that transformed the way the ancient world did business. The shift from barter to standardized currency didn't happen overnight. In Mesopotamia, one of the earliest cradles of civilization, traders used silver as a medium of exchange, weighing it out to determine value. This system, while more flexible than barter, still had its limitations. It wasn't until the Lydians of ancient Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, introduced the first minted coins around 600 BC that trade took a monumental leap forward. These coins, stamped with the mark of a king or city, guaranteed their weight and purity, making transactions faster, fairer, and far more reliable. Suddenly, a merchant in Athens could trade with a seller in Persia without the need for scales or haggling. Currency became the universal language of commerce, spoken in every port and market across the ancient world. But coins were just the beginning. As trade routes expanded, so did the need for more sophisticated financial tools. In China, during the Tang Dynasty, the limitations of carrying heavy coins over long distances led to the invention of paper money. This groundbreaking innovation, known as flying cash, allowed merchants to deposit coins with a trusted agent and receive a paper receipt that could be exchanged for goods elsewhere. It was the birth of the banking system, a concept that would eventually spread across the globe. Imagine the convenience. A trader in Guangzhou could now travel to the markets of Central Asia with nothing but a few sheets of paper, knowing their wealth was secure and portable. The impact of currency on ancient maritime trade was profound. By standardizing value, it eliminated much of the uncertainty that came with barter, making transactions smoother and more predictable. It also fostered trust between merchants from different cultures, as the guarantee of a coin's value transcended language and tradition. This trust, in turn, fueled economic growth, as traders were more willing to take risks and invest in long-distance ventures. The rise of currency didn't just make trade easier, it made it bigger, connecting markets and economies in ways that had never been possible before. What's remarkable is how the legacy of ancient currencies still shapes our world today. The coins of the Roman Empire, with their iconic profiles of emperors, laid the foundation for modern monetary systems. The Chinese invention of paper money paved the way for today's financial infrastructure. Even the concept of credit, so central to our modern economy, has roots in the ancient practice of issuing receipts for deposits. These innovations remind us that the challenges of trade, how to measure value, how to build trust, how to make transactions efficient, are as old as commerce itself. Yet the story of ancient currency is more than just a tale of economics. It's a story of connection. Every coin, every piece of paper money, carried with it the imprint of a culture, a ruler, or a city. When a Roman denarius changed hands in a bustling port, it wasn't just a transaction, it was a moment of cultural exchange, a reminder that trade is about more than goods. It's about the people, the ideas, and the shared history that we carry with us even today. As we reflect on the role of currency in ancient maritime trade, we're reminded that money has always been more than just a tool. It's a symbol of trust, a bridge between worlds, and a testament to the ingenuity of those who dared to imagine a more connected future. And in a world where the flow of goods and ideas continues to shape our lives, the lessons of the past offer timeless insights into the power of innovation and the enduring spirit of human connection. The oceans that carried ancient ships were not just passive pathways, they were living ecosystems, deeply affected by the rise of maritime trade. While we often celebrate the ingenuity and achievements of ancient seafaring civilizations, it's equally important to consider the environmental footprint they left behind. From the forests fell to build fleets to the unintended consequences of moving species across the globe. Ancient trade networks reshaped the natural world in ways that still resonate today. These early interactions between commerce and the environment offer a sobering yet enlightening perspective on the challenges of sustainability, a lesson as relevant now as it was thousands of years ago. One of the most immediate environmental impacts of ancient maritime trade was deforestation. Building ships required vast quantities of timber, and the demand for sturdy, high-quality wood was immense. The Phoenicians, for instance, relied heavily on the cedars of Lebanon to construct their famous vessels. These trees, prized for their durability and resistance to rot, were harvested on a massive scale, leading to widespread deforestation. Over time, this loss of forest cover had cascading effects, from soil erosion to disrupted ecosystems. The same story played out in other regions. In the Mediterranean, Greek and Roman shipbuilders turned to oak and pine, while in Southeast Asia, teak forests were exploited to craft the sturdy ships that plied the monsoon trade routes. The cost of these activities wasn't just measured in timber, it was measured in the long-term health of the land itself. But deforestation wasn't the only environmental challenge. The movement of goods across vast distances also led to the unintended spread of plants, animals, and even microorganisms. Ancient ships, often carrying soil as ballast or transporting livestock for food, became accidental vectors for invasive species. Rats, for example, stowed away on Roman grain ships, spreading to new regions and wreaking havoc on local ecosystems. Similarly, the introduction of non-native plants, whether as food crops or ornamental species, could disrupt delicate ecological balances. In some cases, these introductions were deliberate. The Romans, for instance, brought grapevines and olive trees to regions like Gaul and Britain, transforming local landscapes and agricultural practices. While these changes often benefited human societies, they came at a cost to native species and habitats. Ancient civilizations were not oblivious to these environmental challenges. In fact, many developed early forms of resource management to mitigate their impact. The Minons, for example, practiced sustainable forestry, replanting trees to ensure a steady supply of timber. In China, the Tang Dynasty implemented policies to regulate the use of natural resources, recognizing the importance of balancing economic growth with environmental stewardship. These efforts, though rudimentary by modern standards, reflect an awareness of the need to harmonize human activity with the natural world. What's striking is how these ancient practices echo the challenges we face today. The tension between commerce and conservation is not a new phenomenon, it's a story as old as maritime trade itself. The ancient world struggles with deforestation, invasive species, and resource depletion mirror our own, offering valuable lessons for how we might address these issues in a globalized economy. They remind us that sustainability isn't just a modern buzzword. It's a timeless principle rooted in the recognition that our actions have consequences for the planet we share. As we reflect on the environmental impact of ancient maritime trade, we're reminded that the story of human progress is also a story of adaptation and responsibility. The ancient world's successes and its missteps offer a roadmap for navigating the complex relationship between commerce and conservation. By learning from their experiences, we can chart a course toward a more sustainable future, one that honors both the legacy of the past and the needs of the present. The seas that connected the ancient world are still with us, and so too are the lessons they hold. How we choose to heed them will shape the legacy we leave behind. The secret networks of maritime trade in ancient times were far more than mere routes for moving goods. They were the lifeblood of civilization, weaving together distant cultures and shaping the destiny of humanity. From the Phoenicians, who turned the Mediterranean into a bustling trade hub, to the Polynesians, who navigated the vast Pacific with nothing but the stars and their intuition. These ancient mariners demonstrated a level of ingenuity and resilience that continues to inspire us today. Their journeys weren't just about commerce, they were about connection, discovery, and the unyielding drive to explore the unknown. These networks remind us that the sea was never a barrier, it was a bridge. Through trade, ideas flowed as freely as goods, creating a tapestry of shared knowledge and innovation that transformed the world. The alphabet, spices, art, technology, and even religious beliefs traveled across oceans, carried by the hands of traders who dared to venture beyond the horizon. These exchanges didn't just enrich individual societies, they laid the foundation for the globalized world we live in today. As we reflect on the legacy of these ancient networks, we're reminded of the profound impact they've had on our modern lives. The principles that guided their trade, adaptability, cooperation, and a deep respect for the natural world, are just as relevant now as they were thousands of years ago. Their stories challenge us to think about how we, too, can navigate the challenges of our time with the same spirit of curiosity and determination. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the hidden history of maritime trade. If you enjoyed uncovering these ancient secrets, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of this story resonated most with you? Let us know, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep exploring the mysteries of the past, and remember, the world is full of stories waiting to be discovered. See you soon.